Let me begin with an observation that has always seemed obvious to me, but which surprises many. One of the biggest mistakes people over 65 make is to stop actively saving and investing, believing that it's time to simply spend their accumulated wealth. Frankly, that's a huge misconception. Compounding doesn't retire when you do, it remains your best ally if you give it something to work with. Today, December 30th, 2025, with credit card rates averaging around 22-24%, inflation at 2.7% for November, 10-year Treasury bonds near 4.3 and 4.13%, and average mortgages around 6.1 to 6.2%, continuing to build equity in retirement, protects against unexpected longevity and rising costs. The misguided mindset often arises around age 65. Many feel they've worked enough and switch to free spending mode, minimizing risks and depleting savings without even putting them to use. Sarcasm aside, it's like stopping irrigation on a vineyard just as the grapes are ripe for premium wine. Modern life brings greater longevity, many reach 90 or 100, and with it, unpredictable medical costs and inflationary erosion that devour purchasing power without continuous capital growth. We will explain this was done without haste, applying multidisciplinary mental models that I valued so much. Psychology to unravel the I already deserve to spend everything bias, biology to understand compounding as a lifelong process that does not age, physics for wealth trajectories that accelerate over time, and history for cases of retirees who prematurely exhausted funds versus those who continued accumulating and lived with dignity. The core of the problem is both psychological and practical. After 65, there is an entitlement to unlimited enjoyment, ignoring the fact that persistent inflation and medical expenses, which can exceed hundreds of thousands of dollars, require increasing capital. With average household credit card debt hovering around $9,000, $11,000 at 22 to 20% interest, many retirees fall into this trap, using credit to maintain their lifestyle, turning retirement into financial anxiety. In this thoughtful reflection, we'll explore why stopping saving after 65 is a massive mistake, using current data from 2025, real life anecdotes, and pragmatic advice. Worldly wisdom teaches that patience and continuous accumulation always win. Compounding is a constant companion if you don't abandon it just when it's at its strongest. Prepare for straightforward logic. Continuing to save in retirement isn't greed, it's wisdom for true independence. Okay, let's get straight to the heart of this warning, which I've always considered fundamental for those reaching retirement. Stopping saving and investing after age 65 is one of the most serious and frequent mistakes I see. Compounding doesn't retire with you. On the contrary, it's at this stage that it reaches its greatest power if you continue to feed it with modest contributions. Today, December 30th, 2025, with credit card rates averaging around 22-23%, 10-year Treasury bonds near 4.13%, inflation at 2.7% for November, and extended longevity stopping accumulating exposes you to inflation and unpredictable medical costs that will relentlessly erode your savings. Many think it's too late to save, but that's a myth. The remaining time is enough for small additions to generate a big impact if you let them grow with patience and discipline. Following that same logic, many make the mistake of seeing retirement as a sign to freely spend their accumulated savings without reinvesting pension income or extras. This shift in mindset ignores the fact that life expectancy has increased significantly and that later expenses, especially healthcare, grow exponentially. I continued to reinvest prudently throughout my life, To stop would be to betray the discipline that brought you there and risk an old age filled with anxiety instead of tranquility. The key is to maintain a balanced approach, not to stop completely, but to adjust to low risks and continue adding as much as possible so that your capital doesn't stagnate but continues to protect you against real unforeseen events. Naturally, connecting with biology, compounding is a lifelong process that doesn't age or lose vigor at 65. Just as a healthy organism requires constant nutrients to stay strong in advanced stages, your capital needs continuous, albeit small, contributions to counteract inflation and late risks. Small post retirement reinvestments multiply over the remaining time, protecting your purchasing power precisely when you need it most. With a life expectancy exceeding 85-90 years, for many, this means covering additional decades without depleting the principal and maintaining a dignified life without forced cuts. Let's think fluidly about the physics of financial momentum, which accelerates precisely at retirement. Stopping saving at 65 slows the upward inertia built up over decades. The 70 rule indicates doubling every 9 to 10 years to 7 to 8% real historical return. In 2025, with safe bonds, it will be around 4.13% and diversified portfolios. Maintaining that momentum with reinvestments prevents inflation from turning your trajectory into a slow but inexorable downward one. The idea is simple. Keep adding so that the accumulated force propels you forward, not backward. History reinforces this lesson with painful cases of retirees who depleted their savings by spending without replenishing them, becoming dependent in their later years. In contrast, those who continued investing modestly, like me with Berkshire Hathaway, saw their capital grow and maintain total independence. Today, with average household credit card debt around $9,000 to $11,000 at 20 to 23%, repeating that mistake is even more costly and avoidable. The lesson is clear. Don't underestimate the power of continuing to accumulate wealth in later life. Following the psychological thread, the dominant bias post age 65 is entitlement. I worked enough, now I deserve it all. This feeling drives uncontrolled consumption, ignoring real longevity. Kahneman demonstrated how we overvalue present pleasure in retirement, which directly leads to financial depletion and generates anxiety when money runs out before life expectancy. The solution is to recognize this bias and maintain modest discipline to enjoy life without destroying the financial foundation that was so hard to build. Connecting with evolutionary biology, continuing to save after 65 is pure adaptation for prolonged survival. Organisms accumulate reserves for later stages. Modern humans face late risks, such as medical costs exceeding hundreds of thousands. Reinvesting part of Social Security or pensions multiplies capital against inflation 2.7% and inevitable emergencies in additional decades. This evolutionary strategy ensures that your wealth adapts to a longer life without collapsing under late life pressure. From momentum physics, modest post 65 contributions again accelerate existing inertia. Even $5,000 to $10,000 reinvested annually generates hundreds of thousands more in 2 decades by 2025, with conservative options around 4 to 7%. This maintains an upward trajectory against the constant erosion caused by inflation. Continuity is key so that your capital doesn't lose speed but rather gains over time. Modern history confirms this starkly. In crises like 2008, retirees who stopped accumulating suffered more when their principal ran out. Those who reinvested conservatively recovered and grew with greater longevity. Today, that mistake is magnified exponentially in financial and emotional impact. The lesson remains: continue saving. It protects against inevitable cycles that life brings. Using reverse investing, ask yourself what leads to late ruin. Exhausting savings without growth leaves you vulnerable to inflation and unpredictable health. Continuing to save avoids total catastrophe. Personal ethics. I maintained discipline all my life for moral independence, not family or state dependence in old age. That choice ensures a retirement of peace, not of constant regrets. Following that idea of reverse investing, it's important to see how stopping saving at 65 puts you at real risk. If you deplete your capital without adding anything new, inflation and unexpected expenses will soon leave you with nothing. On the other hand, continuing to save even a little keeps your money growing and protects you. Think of me, I always maintained that discipline until the end to have total independence, not to depend on anyone in old age. That ethical choice makes retirement a stage of freedom, not constant worry. The key is recognizing that life doesn't end at 65 and that your capital needs to keep growing. Now let's connect with the positive psychology that comes after continuing to save. When you reinvest modestly after 65, you build confidence that you control your financial future. That feeling of self efficacy gives you peace of mind and allows you to enjoy retirement without fear. Many fail because they don't see this, but the discipline of saving creates a strong character that withstands any surprise, such as a large medical bill or an increase in daily costs. That inner strength is one of the greatest gifts you give yourself at this stage. From there, we move on to emotional biology because continuing to save reduces the stress that debt or unrestricted spending brings. Cortisol levels decrease when you know your capital is growing on its own, protecting you for longer lifespans. With current life expectancies exceeding 85 years, for many, this emotional peace is key to enjoying family, hobbies, and health without the shadow of financial worries that shorten life. This tranquility is truly worth more than any impulsive purchase. Following this line of thought, let's consider how the physics of the trajectory changes with continuous savings. Your $500,000 or more at age 65 enters a stable and upward trajectory. If you reinvest without that, you fall into a downward curve where inflation beats you by 2025. With safe options like bonds at 4.13%, small contributions maintain that positive trajectory, ensuring that your money outlasts you and gives you real options. History shows us retirees who continued saving and lived with dignity, like some friends who reinvested their pensions and never touched the principal. In contrast, those who stopped ended up selling assets or asking for help. This clear lesson prevents you from repeating past mistakes and gives you a retirement like mine, full of options instead of limitations. The difference lies in maintaining simple discipline, connecting with practical economics. Reinvesting post 65 maximizes the utility of every dollar. Spending everything now gives short term pleasure, but saving provides growing passive income that lasts for decades. With inflation at 2.7%, that keeps your lifestyle intact without painful cuts later on. The smart choice is to prioritize growth over immediate consumption. From the perspective of adaptive biology, continuing to save helps you adapt to later changes, such as fragile health. Your capital adjusts automatically through compounding, covering needs without stress. Organisms survive by accumulating for the end. you do the same for a strong and free old age. This adaptation is natural and effective. The physics of conservation here is simple. Post 65 savings conserve your financial energy for key moments without leaks from excessive spending. Everything goes to growth, doubling its impact in the remaining years. This conservation ensures that nothing is lost and everything multiplies with patience. Recent history, such as the pandemic, showed that retirees without continuous savings suffered more than those who reinvested. This reality reinforces why we should never stop. The lesson is that crises arrive late and continuous preparation saves lives. Finally, in this section, the reverse investment shows you that stopping saving leads to dependence, continuing leads to freedom. My ethical goal has always been that for a full life without constant regrets, retirement deserves that discipline to be fulfilling. Following that same idea of ethical freedom, retirement should not be the moment when you stop taking care of your capital, but rather when you take care of it more carefully because now you depend completely on it. If you continue saving modestly after 65, you avoid dependence on family or the state in old age. That moral independence is something I have always valued highly. It is not about accumulating for the sake of accumulating, but about maintaining the dignity and autonomy that took so much effort to achieve during decades of disciplined work. Now let's connect with the positive psychology that arises when you maintain the discipline of saving for retirement. Every small contribution you reinvest gives you a sense of control and progress. This builds self efficacy, that is, deep confidence that you can manage your financial future. This confidence reduces anxiety and allows you to truly enjoy retirement instead of living with the constant fear that the money will run out before you do. From there, we move on to emotional biology. Continuing to save helps maintain low levels of stress and cortisol. Chronic financial stress shortens life and affects health. On the other hand, knowing that your capital continues to grow, even if it's small, gives you mental and physical peace of mind. With current longevity exceeding 85 or 90 years, for many, this emotional peace becomes one of the greatest benefits of continuing to save after 65. Following this line of thought, let's consider how the physics of the trajectory remains upward when you continue reinvesting your $500,000 or more. At 65, they don't fall into a low orbit if you add even small amounts. The momentum is preserved and the curve continues to rise in 2025 with conservative options like 4.13% bonds or diversified funds. This ensures that your money not only lasts but grows enough to accompany you for many more years. History shows us clear examples of retirees who continued saving and lived more peacefully as people who reinvested part of their pensions and never had to sell assets under pressure. In contrast, those who stopped completely ended up depending on family help or drastically cutting back on their lifestyle. That simple difference makes all the difference in the quality of their final years. Connecting with practical economics. Reinvesting after 65 maximizes the real value of every dollar you've saved. Spending it all now gives momentary pleasure, but saving generates passive income that grows over time. With inflation at 2.7%, that means your standard of living stays stable or even improves slightly without needing to make big sacrifices later on. The smart choice is clear. Finally, in this section, reverse investing shows us that stopping saving after age 65 leads to dependence and vulnerability, while continuing, even modestly, leads to greater freedom and peace of mind. My ethical principle has always been to maintain that discipline until the end so that retirement is a fulfilling stage and not one of constant regrets. The decision to continue saving is one of the wisest you can make at that age. Following this line of thought, the physics of conserving financial energy is very clear. When you continue saving after age 65, you preserve the full potential of your capital without letting it dissipate on unnecessary expenses or high interest rates. Every dollar you reinvest goes directly to growth instead of being lost. This means your money maintains its strength and multiplies over time. By 2025, with conservative options like 4.13% bonds, this simple conservation ensures that nothing is wasted and everything contributes to a more secure and comfortable retirement. Now, let's think about how the stories of people I knew reinforce this idea. Some retired friends who continued to reinvest modestly lived their last years with total independence and without worries, while others who stopped completely ended up selling houses or depending on family. The difference was maintaining the discipline to save, even if it was little. That personal lesson confirmed for me that stopping at 65 is a mistake that is paid for dearly over time. Connecting with the marginal utility economics, every dollar saved after 65 generates more real value than ever because now that money works full time for you without the need for a salary. Spending everything gives short pleasure, but saving creates passive income that increases over the years and covers inflation at 2.7%, maintaining or improving your quality of life without additional effort. From the perspective of hedonistic adaptation biology, continuing to save accustoms you to a deeper and more lasting satisfaction. We quickly become accustomed to luxuries, but the security of growing capital remains as a constant piece that does not fade with time. This positive adaptation makes retirement truly enjoyable instead of a roller coaster of expenses and regrets. The physics of time relativity applied here is powerful. Post 65 time is your most valuable asset, and continuing to save multiplies it because compounding has decades to work with increasing longevity. Every year you add, however small, accelerates the final result, turning time into more freedom and real options instead of increasing limitations. The history of the Great Depression showed that retirees who had stopped saving suffered much more, while those who maintained conservative discipline survived with dignity. Today, with unpredictable crises, that lesson remains valid. Stopping savings in retirement leaves you vulnerable when you need protection the most. Continuing with the psychology of minimizing regrets, continuing to save avoids the deep remorse of having spent everything too soon. Many retirees regret not having followed this simple discipline when they see that the money runs out. I avoided that by maintaining the habit and enjoying an old age without that burden. Finally, at this stage, the ethics of responsibility to yourself dictate that continuing to save after 65 is fulfilling the promise you made to yourself during years of work. It is not greed, it is respect for your past effort and your future. This ethical responsibility ensures a retirement of full dignity, not one of dependence or forced sacrifice. Following that ethical responsibility, voluntary simplicity in retirement is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Rejecting complex expenses or luxuries that tie you down leaves you with greater clarity and freedom. Continuing to save modestly after 65 maintains that powerful simplicity because your capital works on its own without unnecessary complications. In 2025, with conservative options available, that choice gives you a serene old age focused on the essentials: family, reading, modest travel, instead of maintaining appearances that drain resources and energy. Now let's connect with the Lollapalooza effect that I love to explain. When multiple positive forces align after age 65, the discipline of saving, overcome biases, continuous compounding, growing momentum, and historical lessons learned converge for extraordinary results. Capital that seems sufficient becomes real abundance, while stopping saving causes negative forces to amplify and quickly deplete everything. This multidisciplinary confluence is what makes continuing to accumulate so powerful. From there, we move on to symbiotic biology because a pension or social security can perfectly coexist with reinvested savings, creating a mutually beneficial relationship. In contrast, late term debts at 22 23% are purely parasitic. Distinguishing between these and eliminating parasites while feeding symbionts ensures that your financial ecosystem thrives in harmony for decades to come without unnecessary conflict. Following this line of thought, the physics of inverse entropy works when you continue saving after 65. The financial disorder of excessive spending or inflation increases chaos, but reinvesting reduces that disorder and restores order, allowing compounding to take definitive control instead of dispersing your capital in useless payments. Everything is channeled towards orderly and predictable growth that accompanies you to the end. Finally, in this stage, the complete worldly wisdom tells us that not stopping saving after 65 is not optional for a dignified retirement. It is essential to combine patience, ethics, financial discipline, and multidisciplinary thinking to transform a potentially vulnerable old age into a stage of true freedom and fulfillment. I lived it this way until 99, and that is the most valuable lesson I can leave you with. Following that same worldly wisdom, the key to a successful retirement is recognizing that compounding becomes even more valuable after 65 because you now have more free time to work without interruption. Continuing to save modestly at this stage is not optional if you want to maintain real independence. It's the difference between an old age of options and tranquility, or one of limitations and dependence. That multidisciplinary understanding is what I always applied and what allows you to enjoy your golden years without constant financial regrets. Now let's connect with the biology of exponential growth without parasites. Continue saving, eliminate any drains like late stage debts at 22 to 23%, and let your capital grow naturally and powerfully, roughly doubling every decade with controlled inflation at 2.7%. That exponential curve transforms continuous modest savings into wealth that sustains not only your life but a comfortable legacy if you wish. From there, we move to the physics of reverse entropy. Continuing to save reduces the financial clutter that excessive spending or inflation creates. Instead of dispersing your capital on useless payments, everything is channeled towards order and predictable growth. This reduction of chaos gives you a structured retirement where money flows to you, not the other way around. The story of Ford or Rockefeller in their later years shows how they continued to reinvest and lived with total financial control, in contrast to many contemporaries who stopped and lost purchasing power. That lesson endures today with greater longevity. Continuing to save is what separates dignity from vulnerability in old age. Finally, in this stretch, The positive Lollapalooza effect is fully activated when ethical discipline, compounding, accelerated momentum, preserved historical lessons applied, and overcome psychological biases converge after the 65. Results that seemed modest become extraordinary freedom. Stopping saving breaks that confluence and amplifies errors. Continuing strengthens it and gives you a retirement worth living to the end with peace and real options. Friends, we've taken a long time to reflect on one of the most common and costly mistakes in retirement: stopping saving and investing after age 65. Compounding doesn't take vacations or age. It's precisely at this stage that its power becomes most evident because you have decades ahead for small, modest contributions to multiply and protect your independence. Today, December 30th, 2025, with inflation at 2.7%, Treasury bonds at 4.13%, and a life expectancy that easily exceeds 85 or 90 years, for many, stopping accumulating means exposing yourself to a slow but certain erosion of your purchasing power. Meanwhile, continuing to reinvest, even if it's just part of your pension or extra income, keeps your capital alive, growing, and covering unpredictable medical costs that can reach hundreds of thousands. The lesson is clear: retirement is not the end of saving, it's the moment when savings become more valuable than ever because you now depend entirely on them. Always remember the Lollapalooza effect and its positive version. When the ethical discipline of continuing to save, accelerated biological compounding, preserved physical momentum, the historical lessons of those who maintained accumulation, and overcome psychological biases like the entitlement to spend everything aligned with extraordinary force, the results cease to be modest and become real and lasting freedom. In contrast, stopping saving causes negative forces to amplify. Inflation erodes savings, medical expenses, surprise, and anxiety grows. This multidisciplinary confluence is what I have always practiced and what separates a retirement of peace and options from one full of limitations and regrets. Worldly wisdom is not theory, it is a daily habit that protects your future when you need it most. Final, straightforward, practical advice for today: audit your finances. Check if you are reinvesting at least a portion of your post retirement income. Eliminate any late term debt at 22 or 23% that drains resources. Diversify conservatively in low cost indexes or safe bonds. And automate small contributions, even if it's just $5,000 or $10,000 annually, with inflation at 2.7% and conservative options at 4 to 7%. That generates hundreds of thousands more over 2 decades, keeping your lifestyle intact without painful cuts. Reasonable mortgages at 6.18% can coexist, but credit cards are pure poison. Act now because the post 65 period is your greatest ally if you use it wisely. True worldly wisdom in retirement lies in understanding that patience and continuous accumulation always win. I lived it until I was 99, reinvesting prudently without ever stopping and enjoying total independence without depending on anyone. That discipline wasn't a sacrifice, it was an investment in peace, options, and dignity in late old age. In 2025, with unpredictable volatility and increasing longevity, continuing to save isn't greed. It's pure wisdom that allows you to focus on family, reading, modest trips, or what you truly value without the constant shadow of financial worries. As a mentor gathered by this fireplace, I sincerely repeat: do not make the grave mistake of stopping saving after 65. Maintain modest discipline. Reinvest what you can. Let compounding do the heavy lifting, and you will see how a potentially vulnerable retirement becomes a full, free, and dignified stage of life. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that enough is enough. The remaining time is precious if you use it wisely. Live your golden years peacefully, not with regrets. It is remarkable how much continuous patience improves not only your finances but your entire life until the very end.